Not everything on the hard drive. The delete
That drive, I mean.
from that directory. From that directory, you could. So be careful.
But if you're in the root,
If you're on the root of the hard drive,
no.
well, some of the files at the root of the hard drive are hidden in system files, so you would have to do more than just delete asterisk dot asterisk, and we'll talk about that in chapter 6. Miguel.
That last command that you did where you did Notepad and you opened up that XLS file, it would open up in Notepad because your command was Notepad.
Yes, exactly.
If you just opened up the file without telling it what
Oh,
program
good
to
question.
open.
Okay, so if I type, what did I call it?
I can't even remember. Was it Eric? Was it?
No, DIR. So if I type his, Miguel, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Miguel's question was, since before when I typed dir, notepad, dir.txt, it opened Notepad. It opened dir.txt in Notepad. I'm sorry, that's not right, XLS. Okay, because I gave it the full name and I told it, run Notepad, open this file. Okay? If I had just typed dir.xls as the file name, what would happen?
Notepad again? It's the default one.
XLS?
Well, whatever was, whatever is default for this file, for this extension, should it open it through this?
It would open the program. It would
Yeah.
try to open this file using the program that is registered to the XLS extension on this computer, which would be Excel. Okay? So when I do this and I press the Enter key, you'll see that Excel opens, but obviously it tells me in a different format, yada yada. I'm not going to open it. I'm just going to close this. Okay? So my point is that using the word Notepad followed by the file name forces the file to be opened in Notepad. And if it is a plain text file, then it's going to open fine. Okay? If I type Notepad quasars.doc, it's not going to be able to read that file because that file is a Word document that I created with Word. Okay? So output redirection in regards to, most commonly, if you're going to output, redirect the output to a command, it's going to be to a text file. The author covers redirecting to a printer. I'm going to touch on that just to kind of explain to you why you wouldn't typically use that with today's technology. If I were to do something like dir / greater than, there are two different methods that she covers at the end of this chapter that I'm going to touch on. And one is LPT1. Okay, first of all, I'm going to make a general assumption here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have a printer at your house, I'm going to guess that it is either connected to your computer with a USB connection, or it's a wireless printer. Okay, I'm going to make a general guess here that there's nobody in this room that has a printer attached to an LPT port, okay, on their computer. And if they do, it's an old computer, okay? Because in the early days, your LPT port was a parallel port that you connected your printer to. When you bought a printer, you bought a parallel cable, you connected the printer to the cable to the printer, you connected the opposite end to your parallel port on your computer. That LPT1 is your parallel port. So if I had a printer connected to my parallel port, then that would send that command's output directly to the printer. Okay, I don't have a parallel port on my computer, never mind a printer attached to it. Okay, so this command really is not going to accomplish anything with today's technology. Okay, if you did happen to have a printer attached to LPT1, then the next question would be, is what kind of printer is it? And I don't mean, is it an HP or a Canon or a Lexar? Okay, I mean, is it a inkjet technology? Is it a laser technology? Is it a dot matrix technology? Anybody ever use a dot matrix printer? Okay, the old days, those are the fan fold pages. They had holes on the side. You fed the paper through, made noise, physical contact between your print head and the paper.
Walmart loves them.
You gotta, if you think about it, in regards to servicing your customers. If you come in and you buy something from me, and I want to be able to print a receipt for you, an inkjet technology, there's no physical contact between your print head and the paper. So if you have a carbonless type invoices where you have two copies, one for the customer, one for you, and one for whatever, you can't use inkjet technology and get anything on the second page. So the old dot matrix printers, and you know, probably about a year ago, when I went out looking at Staples for myself for a new printer, and I was really surprised. I kind of heard two people talking, and I looked over to see what kind of printer they were looking at, and it was a dot matrix printer. And I was like, wow, they actually still sell those. But if you think about it, it makes sense for businesses to be able to print something and have multiple copies print at one time. So your dot matrix printers have a different type of technology when your paper feeds through the printer. This, with a printer that's a dot matrix printer, the output would go directly to the printer. If you have an inkjet tech printer that's attached to the LPT port, the output would go into memory on the printer, okay? And then depending on the printer, you might see a button flashing that says eject page, or there's some attention needed, because there's nothing in this command that gives any kind of the printer any instructions to advance the page. So it sits there in memory and doesn't know what to do. And that depends on the printer. I had a Canon once that no matter how many times I did this, it sat there, did nothing, didn't tell me, I don't know where the command went, okay? Whereas my HP would blink at me and I'd press the button and lo and behold, it would come out. On a network printer, forget it. Who knows what'll happen. So you don't want, first of all, this wouldn't go to a network printer because this is an LPT port. But that's one example. The other device that she refers to is PRN, okay? Now PRN you could actually use, but because of the issue with it being a dot matrix, or where it goes into bit heaven or into memory on the computer, there's no, I still don't see a reason that you would use this particular device. But what that identifies is, if you go to your printers, devices and printers, or printers, whatever operating system you have, it might look a little different. But you have, in a Windows 7, it's a little green circle with a white checkbox. On Windows XP, there's a black circle, I think, with a white checkbox, but there's definitely a black circle that identifies the default printer. Okay, so if you're in your word processing program and you just hit print, what printer does it go to? Your default printer. Okay, so if you have multiple printers selected here, one of them would be identified as your default printer. If you use the PRN, that's referencing your default printer. Okay, but again, if that printer is a DeskJet printer, it's not going to print. It's going to send the information to the printer, and then how you get it out of that printer would depend on the type of printer that it is. So I don't recommend using either of those methods. If you really want to output, if you really want to take the output of a command and print it, redirect it to a file, open that file in Notepad, and print it with Notepad. Okay? That's what I would recommend. As opposed to having to figure out where it went and what button you got to press to get it to actually print. Okay? Questions on output redirection? And also remember, you know, when you redirect, it will wipe out the file that you redirected to. If the file already exists, it just deletes the old file and creates a new one. If it doesn't exist, it just creates the new one. So be careful with what file names you use. Okay.
You said file name?
File name.
So either if it has a different extension or just...
File name and extension, okay? Sorry. More literal, yes. So if I had put, I had that dir dot, if I did ver greater than dir dot doc, okay, it's not going to wipe out my XLS file. It's a different file, okay? Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to hand out, actually while I'm handing it out, I'll save this video. All of this week's videos worked, and my Thursday, today's Monday. Last week, my Tuesday